I'm not sure how to start this because my brain is still scrambled. Let's call me Josh and my wife, well, we'll call her Candy. We've been married for 6 years, together for 8, and up until recently I thought everything was solid. I'm talking about date nights, in-jokes, random I love you texts. Our relationship was what people said was #goals, or so I thought. It all started after Candy went on a camping trip with some friends. This wasn't unusual for her. She's always been into nature, hiking, stuff like that. I used to go with her, but since I've been working longer hours trying to get a promotion, she's been doing more trips with her friend group. This trip, supposedly just the girls. She came back, off. I can't really explain it. She was snappy, distracted, always glued to her phone. Before, we'd cuddle on the couch and talk about anything, but now she was scrolling through Instagram or answering work text instead of engaging. I joked, "Did you leave your personality in the woods?" She just rolled her eyes and said she was tired. But it wasn't just that. She started dressing differently, like not her usual comfy casual style but tight dresses, low-cut tops, stuff she wore more in her early 20s. At first I didn't mind, I thought maybe she was spicing things up. But when I complimented her she shrugged it off saying, "I'm not dressing for anyone." Then she stopped telling me anything. Usually we'd share little details about our days. But now, her answers were one-liners. Work was fine. Nothing much happened. I chalked it up to stress, maybe post-trip exhaustion, but my gut told me something wasn't adding up. The first red flag hit me like a truck about 2 weeks after the trip. Candy was in the shower and her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I wasn't snooping, but the name Mark Work popped up with a winky face emoji in the message preview. I froze. Mark was her boss. I'd met him a few times, nice guy, a little too friendly, but I didn't think much of it. Now I was staring at his name with a winky face. My brain immediately went into overdrive. Why would her boss be texting her on a Sunday night? I didn't open the message. I told myself I was overthinking it. But when she came out of the shower, I casually asked, "Hey, Mark texted you?" She froze for half a second, barely noticeable, and then smiled. "Oh, it's nothing, probably about that project we're wrapping up." She grabbed her phone, typed something quickly, and tossed it on the couch. That's when I noticed the lock screen had changed. She used to have a picture of us at a concert as her background, but now it was some generic forest landscape. Something was wrong. I just didn't know what yet. After that Mark text, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Candy started working late more often, saying she was swamped with deadlines. It was believable at first. Her company was known for overloading employees, but it was happening almost every night now. She'd leave in the morning in a rush and wouldn't get home until 10 or 11 p.m. I asked her one evening, "Is Mark making everyone work this hard or is it just you?" She gave me this tight smile and said, "It's everyone. We're all drowning in work." Then she added, "Mark is great though. He's been so supportive, even picking up some of my tasks so I don't burn out." That rubbed me the wrong way. Supportive? Picking up her tasks? Isn't he her boss? Isn't it his job to delegate and manage? I didn't say anything though, I didn't want to come across as paranoid. But the excuses kept piling up. One night she came home later than usual, her hair slightly messy, her blouse untucked. I asked her how her day went, and she immediately launched into this detailed story about how she and some co-workers had to stay late fixing an issue on one of their client presentations. It sounded rehearsed, like she'd practiced it in her head before walking through the door. "What co-workers?" I asked. She hesitated, then said, "Oh, you don't know them, they're new hires." "New hires? You never mentioned them before." She waved it off. I didn't think it was important. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes I pictured her with Mark, laughing at some inside joke, leaning too close, maybe even... I stopped myself. No. Candy wouldn't do that. But the next day something else happened. I got a call from one of her friends, Laura. Laura and Candy were close but not best friend close, so it surprised me when she said, "Hey Josh, I wanted to ask, is Candy okay? She's been acting a little weird lately." "Weird how?" I asked. Laura hesitated. "Well, she canceled on our dinner plans last minute last week." Said she wasn't feeling well. But then I saw on her Instagram story that she was at a wine bar with some guy. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but my heart sank. A guy? Are you sure? Yeah, but I didn't see his face, just his arm in the background. I figured maybe it was a work thing, but I don't know. It just felt weird, so I thought I'd check in with you. I thanked Laura and hung up, my head spinning. A wine bar. With a guy? While lying to her friend. When Candy got home that night, I casually asked, "How was last week? You seemed a little under the weather." She blinked, caught off guard, but quickly recovered. "Oh yeah, just a little bug. Nothing serious." My gut told me that was another lie. At this point, the doubts were eating away at me, but I kept trying to give Candy the benefit of the doubt. I told myself it was stress or a rough patch, every couple has them, right? But then came the night that cracked the foundation. Candy was in the shower again, and her phone buzzed on the coffee table. This time I couldn't resist. My hands were sweating as I picked it up. The preview on the lock screen wasn't much. "Just can't wait to see you again," winky face from someone named Jen. Jen? Something wasn't adding up. I knew most of Candy's close friends and I'd never heard of a Jen. That message didn't sound like a conversation between girlfriends either. I didn't unlock the phone, just stared at it like it was a grenade about to go off. When she came out of the bathroom, I decided to play it cool. "Hey, Jen texted you. Is that a new friend?" She froze mid-step, her eyes darting to her phone. "Oh yeah. She's a coworker. We've been working on a project together." I raised an eyebrow. "She seems pretty friendly for a coworker." Candy laughed nervously. "She's just quirky like that. You know how people are these days, always using emojis and stuff." The next morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that Candy was lying straight to my face. So, I decided to dig a little deeper. That evening, while she was in the kitchen making dinner, I said, "By the way, what's Jen's last name? Maybe I've seen her on LinkedIn or something." Candy didn't even look up. Taylor, I think. Or Tyler. Something like that." I didn't press her, but the hesitation was telling. The final straw came a few days later. Candy told me she had to work late again. I offered to drop off dinner at her office, wanting to be the supportive husband. She immediately shut that down, saying, "Oh no, don't worry about it. I'll just grab something with the team. It's easier that way." That night I couldn't sit still. Something in my gut told me to drive to her office, even if it felt ridiculous. So I did. Her office building was dark. No cars in the parking lot except for one. I parked down the block and waited. My heart was pounding. About 30 minutes later I saw her walk out, laughing, hair flowing in the wind. And right behind her, Mark. He wasn't just walking her to her car. He grabbed her arm, turned her toward him and kissed her. I felt like the ground dropped out from under me. I sat there in my car, frozen. Watching your wife kiss another man feels like someone's ripping your chest open and shoving fire inside. My brain kept screaming, "This isn't real." But there she was, leaning into him like it was the most natural thing in the world. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to jump out of the car, scream at them, make a scene. But the other part, the rational part, said to wait. Get proof. So, I pulled out my phone and started recording. It was shaky, but I caught enough. Mark pulling her closer, Candy giggling and looking up at him like he hung the moon. They said something, but I was too far away to hear. Then they got into his car and drove off. I sat there for a long time trying to piece together what just happened. She said she was working late, but here she was with her boss, clearly not discussing spreadsheets. When she got home later that night, I was waiting. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice calm. "How was work?" She didn't miss a beat. "Exhausting. Mark had us redoing the client presentation for hours. I barely got out of there." "Oh really?" I said, leaning back in my chair. "So, where'd you eat?" She blinked, caught off guard. Just grabbed takeout. I wasn't really hungry." That was lie number one. Cool, I said, forcing a smile. "By the way, I was near your office earlier. Weird that it was completely dark." Didn't look like anyone was working late. Candy froze for half a second, but then she recovered, laughing nervously. Oh well, we were in a different wing. The lights go off automatically in the main area. You know how it is. Lie number 2. Interesting, I said, pulling out my phone. Because I actually saw you and Mark leaving the building. Her face drained of color. What? You must have seen someone else. That wasn't me. Oh, it was definitely you, I said, playing the video. Her eyes widened and she stepped back like she was staring at a snake. Josh, it's not what it looks like. I can explain. Go ahead, I said, my voice shaking. Explain to me why my wife is kissing her boss when she's supposed to be at work. She started rambling, throwing out excuses faster than I could process them. It was nothing. He was just being friendly. It's not what you think. I was stressed and he was comforting me. Comforting you? With his lips. I said, standing up. Candy grabbed my arm. Josh, please, you're overreacting. It's not like we're sleeping together. It was just a stupid moment. It didn't mean anything. But the cracks in her story were glaring, and I wasn't buying a word of it. Candy kept pleading with me, trying to spin the story in her favor. Josh, it was just a stupid, impulsive thing. It won't happen again. You're blowing this way out of proportion. I stared at her, dumbfounded. Blowing it out of proportion? I just watched you kiss another man. Do you hear yourself? She crossed her arms defensively. It's not like I cheated. It was just a kiss. And honestly, maybe if you weren't so distant lately, I wouldn't have felt so. I don't know, neglected. Neglected. That word hit me like a slap in the face. Neglected. I said, my voice rising. You're blaming me for this? I've been working my butt off to give us a better life and you're out there playing house with Mark. She threw her hands up. I didn't mean it like that. I'm just saying. I've been feeling alone, Josh. You're always busy and Mark, he noticed. There it was. The classic deflection. Now it was somehow my fault that she'd crossed the line. Don't you dare try to justify this with some pity story, I said, my anger bubbling over. If you had a problem, you could have talked to me. But instead, you're sneaking around behind my back. Candy started crying then, big dramatic tears. I didn't sneak around. It's not like we're having some big affair. It was one mistake and I feel terrible about it, okay? I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that it was just one kiss, that maybe this could still be fixed. But something in her tone, in the way she looked more annoyed than remorseful, set off alarm bells. So if I hadn't seen you, were you planning to tell me about this mistake? I asked. She hesitated, wiping her face. No. I didn't want to hurt you. That's why I didn't say anything. I was trying to protect you. I almost laughed at how absurd that sounded. Protect me? Do you even hear yourself right now? Candy just stood there, crying and shaking her head. Josh, please. You're my husband. You can't let one stupid mistake ruin everything we've built. I wanted to scream, but instead I turned and walked out of the room. I needed space. I needed to think. But deep down I already knew, this wasn't over. The next day I woke up early after barely sleeping. Candy was already up, sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open. She was acting like nothing had happened, sipping coffee and scrolling through emails like it was just another Tuesday. Morning, she said, overly cheerful. I ignored her and grabbed a mug. My head was pounding, but I couldn't bring myself to start this conversation again. Not yet. Josh, she said, breaking the silence. I've been thinking about last night. I really think we need to move past it. It was stupid, yes, but it didn't mean anything. I love you. I made a mistake, but we can't let it define us. I stared at her, wondering if she actually believed the words coming out of her mouth. Move past it? Just like that? She nodded, her expression serious. Yes. We can't dwell on this. It's not healthy. I promise it won't happen again. I set my coffee down, leaning on the counter. Candy, you didn't just trip and accidentally kiss your boss. This isn't something you just sweep under the rug. She sighed, frustrated. I told you it was nothing. Mark and I are just friends. We got caught up in the moment and I regret it. What more do you want me to say? Friends, I repeated, my voice rising. Friends don't kiss like that. Friends don't lie to their spouses about working late while sneaking off to God knows where. That's when her face hardened. I'm not sneaking off anywhere. You're making assumptions. One kiss, Josh. One kiss. You're acting like I burned the house down. Her dismissive tone made my blood boil. You've lied to me. You lied to Laura about being sick. You've been hiding things, Candy. Do you really expect me to believe this was just a kiss? She pushed her chair back, standing up. What do you want from me, Josh? An apology? Fine, I'm sorry. But I can't go back in time and undo it. Do you want to punish me forever? I wanted answers, not her twisted version of damage control. But every time I pushed, she deflected, turning it back on me. Tell me the truth, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Was this really the first time something happened with Mark? Her hesitation was quick, so quick that most people wouldn't notice. But I did. Of course it is, she said, her tone too defensive. I'm not that kind of person. That small pause, though, told me everything I needed to know. I didn't say another word. I grabbed my keys and left the house, needing air, needing space, needing to figure out what I was going to do next. After leaving the house, I parked at a nearby coffee shop and just sat there, staring out the window. My mind was spinning. Candy's defensiveness, her quick explanations, the cracks in her story, it all felt like she was hiding more. I started thinking about the details she'd let slip. It was one mistake. It didn't mean anything. Mark's just been supportive. None of it added up. That's when I decided I needed answers, real answers. I called Laura, Candy's friend. She seemed hesitant to talk the last time we spoke, but I was desperate. Hey Laura, do you have a minute? There was a long pause before she said, yeah, what's up? I hesitated but pushed forward. You mentioned seeing Candy at that wine bar a while back. Do you remember anything else about that night? Who she was with? She sighed. Josh, I don't want to get in the middle of anything, but, yeah, it looked like she was with a guy. I didn't get a good look at him, though. Was it Mark? I asked, my voice tight. Another pause. I can't say for sure. But Josh, if you're asking me, I think you already know the answer. Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I thanked her and hung up, my heart pounding. If Candy was lying about that night, who knows what else she'd lied about. That's when I decided to take things further. I'd never done anything like this before, but I called a private investigator. The PI was surprisingly calm about the whole thing. You'd be surprised how common this is, he said when I explained the situation. We'll start with phone records and surveillance. Give me a week. A week. It felt like an eternity, but I agreed. When I got home that evening, Candy acted like everything was fine. She was making pasta, humming along to some pop song. Hey, I was thinking we should go out this weekend, she said, all smiles. I forced a nod, playing along. Yeah, sounds good. But inside, I was bracing myself for what the PI might find. That week felt like the longest stretch of my life. I was walking around in a daze, pretending things were normal while my stomach churned with doubt and anger. Candy, on the other hand, seemed to be doubling down on the everything's fine act. She started acting overly affectionate, hugging me from behind while I cooked, asking about my day like she suddenly cared and suggesting date nights. It felt so fake, like she was trying to smooth things over without addressing the elephant in the room. One night, she came up behind me while I was scrolling on my phone and draped her arms around my shoulders. Hey, she said softly, I know things have been tense lately, but I really think we can get back to how we were. Don't you? I wanted to believe her, I really did. But every time I looked at her, all I could see was her with Mark outside her office, the way she smiled at him. That image was burned into my mind. Sure, I said flatly, not even looking up. She sighed, leaning against the couch. Josh, I don't know what else I can say to convince you that it was a mistake. I've apologized. I've told you the truth. Have you? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. She frowned. What's that supposed to mean? I turned to face her. It means you've only told me what you think I already know. I feel like there's more to this than you're admitting. Candy's face tightened. You're being paranoid. I told you everything. If you can't believe me, then maybe you're the one with the problem, not me. And there it was, the shift. She wasn't apologizing anymore. She was pushing the blame back on me. You're right, I said, standing up. Maybe I am paranoid. But you know what? I've got plenty of time to figure it out. She looked confused but didn't press further, probably thinking my anger would blow over. But I wasn't letting this go. By the time the private investigator called me, I was more than ready for answers. Josh, he began, his tone calm but firm. We found some things you'll want to know about. My heart sank. Go on. Well, for starters, your wife's phone records show frequent communication with Mark. Texts, calls, even late at night. It's not all work-related either. Some of the messages seem personal. What do you mean by personal? I asked, already dreading the answer. Flirty, playful. Things like can't wait to see you and last night was amazing. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. What else? We followed her a couple of nights this week. On Monday she told you she was working late, right? Yeah, I said through gritted teeth. Well, she wasn't at the office. She met Mark at a hotel. We have photos of them going in and out together. They were there for about 2 hours. My mind went blank. A hotel. Not only was she lying, but she was also taking it to a whole new level. Is there more? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The PI hesitated. On Thursday she met him again, this time at a restaurant across town. We've got footage of them holding hands at the table, laughing, leaning in close. I'm sorry, Josh, but it's pretty clear this isn't just a one-time thing. I thanked him and hung up, my hand shaking as I set the phone down. The proof was there, everything I'd suspected and more. She hadn't just crossed the line, she'd obliterated it. That night, I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I needed to confront her, armed with the truth this time. Candy was sitting on the couch, watching some reality show and scrolling on her phone. She looked so casual, so unbothered, it made me sick. I walked in and stood in front of her, blocking the TV. We need to talk. She looked up, her brow furrowing. No? Can it wait? My show's almost over. No, I said, my voice firm. It can't. Something in my tone must have gotten through to her because she muted the TV and set her phone down. What's going on? I took a deep breath. I know you've been lying to me. I know about the texts, the hotel, the dinners. I know everything. Her face went pale and for a moment she didn't say anything. Then she laughed, an awkward, nervous laugh. What are you even talking about? You're making stuff up now. I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos the PI had sent me. Her walking into the hotel with Mark, their hands intertwined at the restaurant. Candy's expression shifted from denial to panic. Where did you get those? She demanded, her voice shaking. Does it matter? I shot back. You've been caught, Candy. You lied to me over and over again. Don't even try to deny it now. She opened her mouth, then closed it, her eyes darting around like she was searching for an escape. Josh, it's not what it looks like. Not what it looks like. I said, my voice rising. You were at a hotel with him. You were holding his hand in public. How much more obvious does it need to be? Candy stood up, her hands shaking. Okay, fine. Yes, I've been spending time with Mark, but it's not what you think. We're just close, he's been helping me through a lot. He's a good listener. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Helping you? By taking you to hotels? By sending you flirty texts? Do you hear how ridiculous you sound? Tears started streaming down her face. I messed up, okay? I didn't mean for it to get this far. I didn't mean to hurt you. I felt a flicker of something, maybe pity, but it was drowned out by the anger and betrayal boiling inside me. You didn't mean to hurt me? Candy, you've been lying to my face for months. Do you even understand what you've done to us? She sank back onto the couch, sobbing into her hands. I'm sorry, she kept repeating. I'm so sorry. But for the first time her tears didn't move me. I didn't feel sorry for her. I felt nothing but cold, hard resolve. I don't think I can do this anymore, I said quietly. Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with fear. Josh, please. Don't say that. We can fix this. We can go to counseling or something. I'll do whatever it takes. But her words felt hollow, like too little too late. I need some time to think, I said, turning toward the door. But don't expect things to go back to how they were. Not after this. And with that I walked out, leaving her sitting there in tears. After I left, I drove aimlessly for hours trying to process everything. Candy's tears, her pathetic excuses, the sheer audacity of her lies, it all played on repeat in my head. Part of me still wanted to believe her, but the evidence was undeniable. At around midnight, I ended up at my brother's house. He answered the door in his sweatpants, looking half asleep. Josh? What are you doing here, man? I couldn't even get the words out. Instead, I just handed him my phone with the PI's pictures pulled up. He flipped through them, his face going from confusion to anger. Is this Candy? And is that her boss? I nodded, feeling the weight of the truth settle in my chest again. Dude, he ran a hand through his hair. This is messed up. What are you going to do? I don't know, I said, slumping onto his couch. She keeps lying, even when she knows I know the truth. She's begging for another chance, but how do you come back from this? He sat down across from me, shaking his head. You don't, Josh. You don't come back from this. She didn't just make a mistake, she made choices. Over and over again. Hearing him say it out loud hit harder than I expected. I felt my throat tighten. But what if she's serious about wanting to fix things? What if this is salvageable? He leaned forward, his voice firm. Is that really what you want? To spend the rest of your life wondering if she's sneaking around again? If she lied about this, what else has she lied about? I didn't have an answer. The next morning, I woke up to a barrage of texts from Candy. Josh, please come home. I'm sorry for everything. I know I messed up, but I can't lose you. We can get through this. I love you so much. Please don't give up on us. It was non-stop. Calls, texts, voicemails. At one point she even sent me a picture of her wedding ring sitting on the kitchen counter with the message, I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust back. It felt manipulative, like she was trying to guilt me into forgiving her. I ignored everything. Later that day, Candy showed up at my brother's house. I heard the knock and immediately knew it was her. My brother looked at me, his face grim. You want me to get rid of her? I shook my head. No. I'll handle it. I opened the door and there she was, looking disheveled, like she hadn't slept all night. Her eyes were red and puffy, and she clutched her phone like it was a lifeline. Josh, she said, her voice breaking. Please. Just let me talk to you. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. What do you want, Candy? I want to fix this, she said, tears streaming down her face. I know I lied and I know I hurt you, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this right. You keep saying that, I said, my voice cold. But do you even understand what you've done? Do you get how much you've destroyed my trust? I do, she insisted, reaching for my hand. And I'll prove it to you. I'll cut off all contact with Mark. I'll quit my job if I have to. I pulled my hand away. This isn't about Mark. This is about you. You made choices, Candy. Over and over again you chose to lie to me, to sneak around. How am I supposed to believe a single word you say? She started sobbing, covering her face with her hands. I don't know. I don't know how to fix this, but I can't lose you. Please, Josh. Don't leave me. I felt a pang of guilt, despite everything, seeing her like this hurt. But then I thought about the texts, the hotel, the lies. And that pain turned to anger. I need space, I said firmly. Don't call me, don't text me. I'll reach out when I'm ready, if I'm ready. She looked up at me, her face desperate. What does that mean? Are you saying it's over? I'm saying I don't know if I can forgive you, I said. And honestly, right now, I don't think I want to. I turned and walked back inside, leaving her standing on the porch, sobbing. For the next few days I stayed at my brother's place, trying to figure out my next move. Candy sent a few more messages, but eventually she seemed to get the hint and backed off. Meanwhile, I started looking into divorce lawyers. It felt drastic, but I needed to know my options. My brother was supportive, but every time we talked about it, I felt like I was spiraling further into anger and sadness. Part of me wanted to confront Mark, to tell him exactly what I thought of him. But what good would that do? He wasn't the one who broke our vows, Candy was. I felt stuck, like my whole life had been turned upside down. One night, my brother said, "Josh, you don't have to decide everything right now. Take it one day at a time." He was right. But every time I thought about Candy, about the life we'd built together, all I felt was betrayal. After days of silence, Candy sent a long email. She claimed she wanted to come clean about everything. I hesitated but read it. She admitted the affair had been going on for months, not weeks. It started with harmless flirting but quickly escalated. She swore it was only emotional for a while before things turned physical. The kicker? She confessed Mark wasn't the only one. There was another guy, someone she met through work events. Reading that made my stomach turn. Everything I thought I knew about her was unraveling. She ended the email by begging for another chance, claiming she was lost and didn't know why she did what she did. She promised to go to therapy, quit her job, anything to prove her love. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the email to the divorce lawyer I'd contacted. I was done. After forwarding the email to the lawyer, I sat there staring at my screen. Candy's words were swirling in my head: lost, prove her love, another chance. But none of it felt genuine. It was all about her, not the damage she'd caused. That night I called my lawyer. "I'm ready to move forward with the divorce," I told him. Saying it out loud felt surreal but also like a weight lifting off my chest. Candy must have sensed my silence because she started texting again. "Josh, can we please talk? I'll do anything to fix this." I ignored her. She had her chance to tell the truth, and she chose to lie until she couldn't anymore. Later that week I had the papers drawn up. I wasn't angry anymore, just numb. This wasn't the life I wanted, but it was the only path forward. Candy must have realized I was serious when she got the divorce papers. That same night she showed up at my brother's house, pounding on the door like her life depended on it. "Josh, please," she yelled. "I just want to talk." My brother opened the door before I could stop him, glaring at her. "You need to leave," he said firmly. Candy pushed past him, her eyes locking on me. "Josh, you can't do this. You can't just throw away everything we've built together." I stood up, my chest tight with frustration. "I didn't throw it away, Candy. You did. You threw it away when you lied, when you cheated, when you kept doubling down instead of telling me the truth." She started crying, tears streaming down her face as she shook her head. "I wasn't thinking clearly. I made mistakes, but I love you. Doesn't that count for something?" I wanted to yell, to scream at her for how ridiculous she sounded. Instead, I forced myself to stay calm. "Candy, love isn't enough. You didn't just make a mistake, you made choices. Over and over again you chose to betray me. I can't trust you anymore, and without trust there's nothing left." She dropped to her knees, sobbing into her hands. "Please, Josh. Please don't do this. I'll do whatever it takes, therapy, moving away, anything. Just don't leave me." My brother stepped in then, his voice hard. "You need to leave. You've said your piece and Josh doesn't owe you anything else." Candy looked at him, her face crumpling further. "Please just let me stay. I can't go back to that house alone." "You should have thought of that before," he shot back. I walked to the door and held it open. "Candy, you need to go. This isn't helping either of us." She stood slowly, her shoulders slumped, and walked toward me. As she passed, she grabbed my hand and whispered, "I'll never stop loving you." I didn't respond. I couldn't. She left, and the silence that followed was deafening. My brother put a hand on my shoulder. "You okay?" I nodded, even though I wasn't sure. That night I sat alone in my room, replaying the last 8 years of my life. The happy memories felt tainted now, every laugh, every kiss, every promise. I wondered how much of it had been real and how much had been a lie. I thought about the times I'd ignored the little red flags, brushed off her flirtatious behavior as harmless. I'd trusted her completely, and she'd taken that trust and shattered it. For the first time I let myself cry. Not just for what I'd lost, but for the life I thought I had, the future I'd been building in my mind. It was gone now and there was no getting it back. The days after Candy's visit felt surreal. It was like I was stuck in some bad dream where every moment reminded me of her betrayal. Every little thing, the photos still hanging on the wall, her coffee mug in the kitchen, felt like a punch to the gut. I decided I couldn't stay in the house any longer. It was too full of memories, too suffocating. I packed a bag and crashed at my brother's place while I started looking for an apartment. Candy must have noticed I wasn't coming home because the texts started again, even more desperate this time. "Josh, I'm so sorry for showing up like that. Please, can we just talk? One last time. I know I hurt you, but I'm falling apart without you. Please don't do this. I'll sign the divorce papers if that's what you want, but at least let me explain myself." I ignored every message. My lawyer advised me to maintain distance, and honestly I didn't trust myself to have another conversation with her. She had a way of twisting things, of making me question myself. Still, it wasn't easy. Part of me wanted to respond, to tell her how much she'd hurt me, to unload all the anger and pain she'd caused. But what was the point? Nothing she said could undo what she'd done. A week later I got a call from a mutual friend, Laura, the same one who'd warned me about Candy before. "Josh, you need to know something," she said, her voice hesitant. "What now?" I asked, bracing myself. "Candy's been talking to people, trying to spin the story. She's saying you're overreacting, that it wasn't a full-blown affair, just a lapse in judgment." My stomach turned. A lapse in judgment? She lied to me for months, Laura. She cheated. How is that just a lapse? "I know," Laura said quickly. "I'm not defending her. I just thought you should know what she's telling people. She's trying to get ahead of it, make herself look like the victim." I thanked her for the heads up, but I was livid. Candy had the nerve to try to save face while I was still picking up the pieces of my life. It was another reminder of who she really was. Someone who couldn't own up to her mistakes, even when they were staring her in the face. That night, I called my lawyer and told him I wanted to push forward with the divorce as quickly as possible. The sooner I could be free of her, the better. It wasn't just about ending the marriage anymore. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my peace of mind. I spent the next few days going through the house, boxing up her things. I couldn't stand to look at them anymore. The clothes, the knickknacks, the little notes she used to leave me. They all went into boxes, which I left in the garage for her to pick up. It felt like ripping off a Band-Aid, painful but necessary. Every box I packed, every photo I took down, felt like a small step toward letting go. By the end of the week I was exhausted but strangely lighter. For the first time in weeks I felt like I could breathe again. Candy didn't take long to notice the boxes in the garage. She showed up unannounced again, but this time she didn't bang on the door. Instead, she texted me from the driveway. "I see you packed my stuff. Can I at least come in to talk? Just for a few minutes." I stared at the message for a long moment before replying, "No. Your things are in the garage. Please take them and leave." A few minutes later I heard the sound of her car door slam. Then the shuffle of boxes being moved. I couldn't bring myself to look out the window. I didn't need to see her face or hear whatever excuses she'd come up with this time. When she was gone, I stepped outside. The garage was empty except for one thing, a small envelope sitting on the workbench. I opened it cautiously, half expecting it to be another letter full of apologies and promises I couldn't believe. Instead, it was a single photo of us from our honeymoon, along with a short note. "I know I've ruined everything, but I'll always treasure what we had. I'm sorry I wasn't better for you. You deserved more." I stood there for a long time, staring at that picture. We looked so happy, so full of hope for the future. It felt like it was from another lifetime. I threw the photo and the note in the trash. I wasn't going to hold on to any more reminders of a life that wasn't real. That night, I sat down and wrote my own email to Candy, the final piece of closure I needed for myself. I told her I wasn't angry anymore, just disappointed. I told her I hoped she would take responsibility for her actions and learn from them, not for me but for herself. And I told her I wouldn't be responding to her messages anymore, because I needed to focus on moving forward. Then I hit send, blocked her number, and logged out of the email account we used to share. It was the first time in weeks that I slept through the night. In the weeks after sending that final email, life started to feel less chaotic. The divorce process moved forward smoothly, mostly because I made it clear to my lawyer that I wanted a clean break, no drawn-out fights, no drama. Candy didn't contest anything. It was as though she finally understood there was no coming back. I moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. It wasn't much, a one-bedroom with outdated cabinets and a creaky balcony, but it was mine. No reminders of Candy, no ghosts of the life we'd built together. For the first time in years I felt like I could breathe. During this time, I leaned heavily on my brother and a few close friends. They kept me grounded, reminding me that life didn't end with a failed marriage. Laura, the friend who'd warned me about Candy, also became an unexpected source of support. She apologized again for not speaking up sooner, but I didn't hold it against her. She wasn't responsible for Candy's choices. One night, over a couple of beers, my brother said something that stuck with me. "This isn't the end for you, Josh. It's just a reset. You get to start over, and this time you get to do it right." He was right. I started focusing on myself again, something I hadn't done in years. I picked up old hobbies I'd neglected, like playing guitar and hiking. I even joined a local running group, which gave me a chance to meet new people and clear my head. The pain of Candy's betrayal didn't vanish overnight, but it dulled with time. Slowly, I started thinking about her less and less. She was a chapter of my life, a painful one but not the whole story. One day, while unpacking a box of old photos, I found a picture of myself from college. I looked so carefree, so hopeful. Seeing it made me realize something. I wasn't that far from being that guy again. I'm not sure what the future holds, but for the first time in months I'm okay with that. I don't need all the answers right now. All I know is I'm moving forward, and that's enough.